Hello.
Hi.
Hello.
Can you hear me okay?
Yes. Happy President's Day
Thank you. Same to you.
for all our good presidents except two of the last three administrations, which we care to fight against and not for.
Even Bush said something today about what presidents should be doing, and I think he was talking directly to Trump. Here's my new little device here.
Ooh, sweet.
Woo! So I'm going to use this for the Central Committee as well as our meetings when we're in the room. This is a little speakerphone. It's really handy dandy little thing. So, and it's wireless.
Ooh, new toys.
Yeah.
Is it like a microphone?
It's a microphone and speaker all combined. So you don't have the feedback with multiple speakers. And we were trying to come up with a solution for not having to run around with the microphones, passing them out. And I found this little device. So it's
Cool.
cool.
We won't have the screeching we had last month with Eloise.
Did we have screeching with, oh, her phone? Yeah. She had 2 sessions running. So once we figured that out, we were okay. And and it is about time. So let me just do a quick check and take a look at who all is on the call.
Good. This will be nice. We have two guest speakers. I like that.
I'm gonna, Victor, I'm gonna go ahead and ask you to unmute and let's check your microphone real quick. Okay, ask you to unmute.
Can we have a test voice, Victor?
Can you hear me?
Yes.
Yes. Wonderful.
That's quite good.
And I'm just going to go ahead and open up the meeting here, but I'm just going to pin you so I can find you easily here.
Okay, perfect.
So just don't go away.
Good
Bear
evening.
with me, folks. Welcome, everybody. Thank you for joining the Tri-Valley Democratic Club. My name is Jackie. I'm the president of the club. For those that are new to the club, we are chartered through the Alameda County Democratic Central Committee. And as a matter of fact, I think that chartering is good through the end of this year. And then next year we'll be, I believe, chartering again with the county. I welcome everybody to become a member. Tonight, we will be listening to 2 candidates for Congressional District 14. We will continue on with additional candidates in April. And then during our April meeting, we will actually hold an endorsement vote. So there's still time to hear for additional candidates. And I will let Richard go ahead and walk through that process a little later. Just to open up with tonight's meeting, 6 people have died in ICE custody since January 2026. And we've heard about a couple of them. They've made national attention, but you know, the reporting isn't coming out. They are not doing the reporting as should be done monthly coming out of Department of Homeland Security. Early last January, Geraldo Lunas Campos, a 55-year-old father from Cuba, died while in detention at Camp East Montana facility in El Paso, Texas. Although ICE is legally required to report deaths that occur in custody, its public disclosures have come way late and often with little information, as we're seeing in a lot of these deaths, out and out lies. Initially, ICE stated Mr. Lunas experienced a medical emergency after becoming disruptive. But soon after, El Paso medical examiner ruled his death was a homicide arising from asphyxia due to neck and torso compression. DHS then attempted to blame his death on attempted suicide. According to reports, a witness said Mr. Lunas Campos was handcuffed while at least 5 guards held him down and 1 guard squeezed his neck until he was unconscious. This contradiction sparked public outrage and left his children with questions about what actually happened. Unfortunately, we're going to have to be reporting on these things monthly. It's not going to stop until we totally defund ICE or they put changes into place in the way they operate. So with that, I'd like to turn it over to Richard Lee, and he's going to go ahead and introduce our guest tonight, our first speaker. Richard, go ahead and unmute.
Great. Thanks, Jackie. Thank you all for being here. So Jackie just went over it, but we'll have 2 candidates for the 14th Congressional District talk to us today, starting, of course, with San Leandro Councilmember Victor Aguilar, who is here. Matt Ortega, another candidate, will be joining us later in the meeting. And then in April, we will have, at the moment, 2 other candidates, depending, of course, on if anybody else joins the race, who's a Democrat by the filing deadline. That is potentially up for more inclusion. And then we will have our endorsement ballot sent out after our April meeting for an endorsement vote. So without further ado, one thing that, oh, actually, sorry, I should mention this. One thing before we get started is that we will have our first endorsement ballot for California governor at our next meeting in March. Per our club bylaws, members must be in good standing to be voting members, and the criteria for that is you must have paid your dues at least 28 days in advance of the endorsement ballot. That is today. Today is the last day to get your dues in before our March meeting, when we will be voting on that particular race. So if you would like to be involved for our endorsement process this primary cycle this year, please make sure to get your dues in by the end of today. Without further ado, San Leandro Councilmember Victor, the floor is yours. The format that we will follow is you'll have 5 minutes for an opening statement, followed by some Q&A from the club, and then we'll give you a 1-minute closer should you choose to take that opportunity. But thank you so much for being here, and I'll turn it over to you.
Of course. Thank you so much, Richard, and thank you to Tri-Valley Democratic Club. Can you all hear me okay?
Yes.
Wonderful. Well, thank you for this opportunity to earn your endorsement for California's 14th Congressional District. I know a little bit about me. My name is Victor Aguilar. I'm a council member for the city of San Leandro, serving my last term. I am termed out at the end of the year. So I kind of, I didn't get involved into politics because it was convenient. I got angry and ran on a platform with social justice to transform the community. I got involved because it was necessary. I grew up as a young gay Latino man where I didn't fit in Southern California and growing up in a small town. I made the decision to attend college in Hawaii. I attended Hawaii Pacific University to study political science, not just to earn a degree, but to educate myself. I wanted to understand the systems of power, how politics worked. I wanted to understand how policy shapes people's lives, and I wanted to gain the tools to help educate my own parents. When I came out to them, those conversations weren't rooted in love, but also in understanding. Today, my family fully accepts me. That journey shaped my belief that change is possible, especially at the family level and at the national level. Before serving on the San Leandro City Council, I served as chair of the Human Services Commission. There, I led a comprehensive gap analysis study to identify where our city was failing residents. One of those most glaring gaps was mental health services. That experience grounded me in data-driven policymaking and in the understanding that government must be proactive and not reactive. On the city council, I didn't just vote, I worked. I've implemented various policies, especially during COVID, when families were terrified of losing their homes. I supported and helped implement rent stabilization and an eviction moratorium. I believe that housing stability is not a slogan for me. It's a lifeline for working families. On public safety, I pushed to transform the San Leandro Police Department. That's where we established a civilian police oversight board because accountability builds trust. And so we invested in reforms that made our department more transparent and more responsive in our community of San Leandro. On homelessness, I supported the creation of a navigation center because here, people deserve services, they deserve dignity and a pathway back to stability, not just displacement. As a social justice advocate here in San Leandro and on the council, I've worked to close the equity gaps behind City Hall. I've advocated alongside our school boards to address disparities in student outcomes and supported bond measures to strengthen the San Leandro Unified School District. Public education here is one of the most powerful equalizers we have, and I will always fight for it. That's why I advocated and ran to serve on the San Leandro Board of Trustees. My advocacy extends beyond local office. I served as president of the East Bay Stonewall Democratic Club. I served as president of the Lavender Seniors of the East Bay, which is a nonprofit to help seniors age in place. And the East Bay Stonewall Democratic Club is one of the most influential LGBTQ Democratic clubs in our region. I am a current elected member of the California Democratic Party Central Committee, representing the 20th Assembly District. Previously, I served as vice chair for 8018, and nationally, I served as president for the National League of Cities LGBTQ Local Officials constituency group advocating for LGBTQ rights across the country. I've worked to ensure that equality is not just protective in progressive cities, but expanded everywhere. So through the line in all of this is simple. Like, I showed up, I did the work, and I delivered results. We are living in a moment where democracy itself is under strain. Extremism is louder, authoritarianism is bolder, and marginalized communities, especially LGBT people, immigrants, working families are being targeted again. I believe that the time is now for me to serve at the federal level. We need pragmatic, battle-tested progressives in Congress who understand how local policy connects to national impact. We also need leaders who have governed, who have built coalitions, and who know how to turn values into legislation. I am running because this district deserves a representative who will defend democracy, protect civil rights, fight for housing stability, expand mental health services, and ensure that every family, no matter who they are or who they love, has a fair shot. I am ready to do that work in Washington, and I am here to earn your endorsement. Thank you for this.
Sorry, but I need to change that music a hair, I think.
Is that 5 minutes?
I think, yeah, that's a 5 minute, goes by fast.
That was perfect. Thanks, Victor.
Of course.
All right, going into questions, as a reminder, if you have a question for Victor, you can either raise your virtual hand or you can drop the question in the chat. I see two hands right now. We'll start with Ellis. And please keep your question short if possible to respect Victor's time.
Richard, I don't have any virtual hands. It's just these. Very nice presentation. I'm very impressed. I'm just wondering, if you get into Congress, which committees would you prefer to be on to give you maximum impact?
Thank you for asking that question. I think one of the tough committees is the Committee on Oversight and Government Reform. That is something that is one of the most influential and powerful panels in the House, and is just one of the three houses which has the authority to issue subpoenas. And so that is something that I would strongly advocate and fight for. And as a new freshman in Congress, closed mouths don't get fed, and I am someone who knows how to put up a fight and advocate. And so that is something that I am looking forward to in Congress.
Great, thanks, Victor. Manav, I see your hand. Go ahead and unmute.
Hey, Victor.
Hi.
Yeah, so I wanted to ask, obviously we're the Tri-Valley Democrats, and a lot of people don't consider the Tri-Valley region to be part of the Bay Area. we're often like misrepresented. So I guess like what will you do as a Congress member, as a member of Congress, to fight for the Tri-Valley and help address the issues that matter to us, especially like the progressive issues like climate change and housing and things like that?
Yeah, thank you for asking that. Yeah, I've worked in the Tri-Valley, worked in construction in Pleasanton, and so I know the Tri-Valley very well, and commuting over the hill from San Leandro. So I know that the Tri-Valley is very diverse. There's a highly educated um, group of folks and working class. There's also housing cost burden. I know with the vast development of Dublin, it's unattainable to own a home unless you have some money sitting somewhere. So I think the advocacy on my end is to make sure that in Congress I advocate for the Cost of Living Fairness Act, and also to make sure that we're able to provide housing affordability and Smart Growth Act to incentivize cities to build missing middle housing near. I think in Pleasanton, some of the council members have been NIMBYs with regards to putting forth the missing middle housing and low income and affordable housing in those particular areas. I think that's something that we need to work with, provide incentives, and advocate. I know the Tri very, very well. It is part of the Bay. It's Alameda County, and there's a lot of hidden gems in the surrounding cities. So those are things that I would advocate for, and also strong LGBTQ policies. And I know there's a lot of folks that are also frustrated with the government dysfunction. So that's those are things that I will work on. Housing is one of those things that we need to provide and make it more affordable, especially in the Tri-Valley.
Thank you.
Thanks, Victor. I know we have a couple questions in chat. Before we get to those, I just wanted to check, Alois. I'm seeing that you've started a timer. I just want to check with you if that was started on accident. I'm seeing a timer counting down from like 2 minutes right now at the top of the screen.
Let's just go ahead and ignore that.
Okay.
It's
All right,
probably
we'll move on to other questions. Jackie, I see your hand up. I'll get to the questions in the chat first, and then we'll get to you. Stephanie asks Victor, will you accept contributions from APAC?
No.
Short and sweet. Nyanth asks, why do you think you are more qualified or will be a better representative for the Tri-Valley compared to the other candidates in this race?
I think that's a good question. Everything I've done in the community and growing up in Southern California, getting involved in politics in Hawaii, getting involved locally, Human Services Commission, moving into the school board, into city council. This is a path that I have been navigating towards and understanding and working and getting myself lost in public service and driving results. I think putting forth a moratorium and eviction, passing rent stabilization, implementing navigation to help those most vulnerable populations, advocate for housing in our city is something that I am able to do, to work together, to collaborate with the communities. I think there's Congress is a different beast, and I think that's something that I can tackle. I am an unapologetic candidate who knows how to navigate the waters, who knows how to build coalitions, who knows how to gain trust and work together with the communities. And I've worked and have a lot of colleagues, and I am friends with council members and mayors in the Tri-Valley and have those relationships. So I know what it takes. I advocate. I am somebody who is visible, who is actually in the communities doing the work. And I'm out there. I think that I would be that staunch advocate, and I am someone that is easily attainable. So if you all need to get a hold of me, that is something that I'm very responsive and would would be able to advocate and be accessible and listen to you all needs to help implement and advocate for change and justice in these communities.
Thank you, Victor. I see another question from Shauna. What's your take on data centers? Should tech want them to come to the district?
So my take on data centers, I mean, this is a loaded question. I think what we need to do is we need to focus where we put data centers. I think some of the focus is putting the data centers on low income communities. I think we need to identify areas and locations as somebody who's worked in the community. I think that is something that we really need to hunker down on and pass policy to make sure we have these data centers located in regions where there is disaster-free zones. So like areas out in Texas or parts of Central Valley that just are open land. I think that's where we need to focus on putting data centers. I think with AI technology, we also need to make sure that we're adding some sort of regulations. But with regards to data centers, that's something that we need to make sure that we're putting out in the surrounding desolate areas rather than putting them in populated cities.
Thank you, Victor. Jackie, I wanted to check with you if you still had a question. I saw you lowered your hand.
Yes, I do. Recently, or last election, the voters in Dublin approved Measure II, but the county recently said that cannot be implemented. Do you have an opinion on Measure II and what the Board of Supervisors recently did to overturn that?
To be honest, Measure I have not been up to speed on that, so I'll need to do some research and get back to you on Measure II.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Thank you.
Thank you both. Manav has another question in the chat. Will you support the transit measure, Victor?
The transit measure, what measure is?
Basically the one supported by all the counties to support the Metropolitan Transportation Committee, like to fund BART and LAFTA and AC Transit.
Yes.
Perfect. I see two more questions from Charles and Shauna. They're both around AI, so I guess I'll try and combine them. Your website, Victor, mentions AI regulations as a priority. What type of regulatory framework for AI would you suggest? And then Shauna's question is also basically, will you take steps to regulate AI?
Yes, I mean, we need to implement policy regarding AI. I think, with regards to privacy and security, I think, that's first and foremost. You can go in and tell AI, ask it what to do, and it can basically tell your own story. There's a lot of information that is out in AI, and anybody can go in there and talk to it and get any information, address, history. It's something that is absolutely necessary and something that I will advocate to work on to make sure that we're passing policy to help to protect us, but also to implement a tax to help protect workers as well, because AI, a lot of folks are concerned that it's going to, AI will replace jobs. We're starting to see some of that and to implement some regulations behind the end to tax those businesses that are using it to replace jobs.
Thank you, Victor. I see two more questions in the chat. Nianth asks a second question. You said you have good relations with local leaders, but it looks like you're being sued by your former city manager. What is your take on this?
Being sued by the former city manager, so there was an anti-SLAPP motion that was granted by the judge to basically, it's I was protected by my freedom of speech to do my job. And what happened with that lawsuit is the judge granted the anti-SLAPP motion to basically exonerate me from any wrongdoing. So, in regards to answering that question, there was, I was not personally sued. The city was, I was named in the lawsuit, but the the reasons for the allegations were not sustained with regards to what the lawsuit mentioned. There was a censure with regards to violating the city charter and basically doing my job. And in the state of California, it is, it's fairly easy to file a complaint. But with regards to, me doing my job and being that staunch advocate, I was, able to make change and advocate in our own community. So, I think sometimes there are some things that people need to do. You need to stand up and speak up in order to get work done in the community.
Thank you, Victor. I see one more question in the chat. As a reminder, we have a few more minutes left. If anybody has any last questions for Victor, feel free to raise your virtual hand or drop it in the chat. Victor Mark asks a question: will you support funding for science, healthcare, the environment, including funding for long COVID and related ME/CFFs, other chronic illnesses? Eric Swalwell was very supportive.
Yes, I will support that. I will support funding for all of those issues that were mentioned.
Perfect. Ellis, I see you have your hand up. Go ahead and unmute.
Okay. Thank you again for speaking to the club. It seems that we're in a dilemma right now because the Constitution has really failed to protect us against Trump. I'm just wondering, what changes would you like to see in order to protect us against a future Trump? What safeguards could we put into place that would protect us from weaponization of so many different departments? I can go on and list them, but I think we all know what they are.
Nice,
Well,
Ellis.
Try that one. That's a hard question.
That's a loaded question. I think, we can start with ICE. I think, the funding for that, it's unnecessary, and it's disgusting to see what is going on with, with our community. As somebody who is an immigrant of Mexican descent families, I take it personal what is happening. I think, we live on stolen land, and that's, let's just start there. And I think, we've implemented rules to help regulate, implemented laws to help kind of govern ourselves. And I think they're with our president, there are a lot of things that are going on. And with this extremism, I think with his authoritarianism, we need to start by protecting, being the advocate and protecting your communities, and continue to grow the memberships of the Democratic clubs to advocate for our policies and our values. I think there are a lot of things that we can do, but when I get into the House, I would advocate to make sure that we're passing policies and passing bills that protect us, protect the most vulnerable. And I think what is currently happening right now, there's a lot of distractions with not releasing the Epstein files, and there are a lot of detractors. There's so much that needs to be done, and I can't just answer this one question. I think it's something that we all have to work on together. I think there's, we need to send a staunch advocate, somebody who's able to get work done, to build coalitions, to work together with the communities, work together with the organizations, and get that input and feedback, and take that to Congress to help make that change, and put that experienced leader, and somebody who is unapologetic and be able to advocate at that federal level.
Thank you very much, Victor. Shauna, I see your hand is up. You can go ahead and unmute.
Yeah, thanks. Hi, Victor. The question that you answered earlier around AI really circled around jobs and like jobs going away and whatnot. And I feel like that's one aspect of the AI question. Can you speak to the other aspect where it's like truth and verifiability and, the regulation of like, if you're going to create content and whatnot, you have to stamp it, or you have to be responsible for its creation and for its factual basis.
Right. I mean, AI is, we can tell it what to do and it'll spew out. It's just it can give you some information, but a lot of the information has to be fact checked. And that's somewhere where we need to start to make sure that what AI is spewing out is valid. There is information that needs to be double checked, and stuff that can be falsely put in, where folks can, there are a lot of folks that are vulnerable, and AI, there are a lot of images that are being created or videos being created that look believable. And I think that's where we need to implement policy to make sure that what is being transcribed or put together is truthful. And there's AI can spew out whatever you tell it to do, and it will lie to you. I think that's where we need to make sure that we will implement policies to fact check what is being put out there, and is being cross-referenced. I think those are some policies that we need to help implement, but also to help protect, because AI has access to information. If you go on, you can get anyone's address, phone number, if that information is out there in the cloud. And it's this is something that we need to really focus on and advocate for policies behind this to help protect us, and the truth.
Will your stance be to try and take those steps before something of negative consequence happens? Are you like a regulator before the fact, or are you looking to regulate once we figure out what the dangers more clearly are?
So both. It's trial and error, regulated before the fact, but there were also things that are kind of you don't know until it happens. But we can try to protect and implement policies, but things are bound to happen. And that's where you learn and implement more policy to help strengthen that aspect, to protect us from AI misuse.
Great. Thank you, Victor. And thank you, Shauna, for the question. I see two more in the chat, and then we'll cut it off to respect Victor's time. Alois asks, Victor, do you support data centers providing their own energy?
I'm sorry, do I support data centers providing their own energy?
Yes.
It just depends on how that energy is manufactured. If that is utilizing solar farms without impacting local communities, then yes.
Thank you. And then one last question from Neonth. If elected and the Democrats win a majority in the House, will you support Hakeem Jeffries for Speaker or support another leader?
Yes, I will. I will support Hakeem Jeffries.
Perfect. Thank you so much. Thanks for being patient with all of our questions, Victor. I'll give you a minute to close out if you'd like to take it, just to let us know some, just to close out.
All right. Well, thank you. Thank you so much for your time. A lot of great questions. I just wanted to say, Victor Aguilar here, running for the 14th Congressional District. I'm a proud gay Latino public servant, former Human Services Commissioner, chair, a city council member who has delivered real policy outcomes. As former president of the East Bay Stonewall, not former president, as former president of the Lavender Seniors of the East Bay, board member of the East Bay Stonewall Democratic Club, and national LGBTQ advocate. I have fought for rent stabilization, eviction protections. I've worked to transform policing throughout our city and implemented a civilian police oversight board. I supported navigation centers, school funding, and equity-driven policies. I've organized within our party and advocated nationally for LGBTQ rights. I'm now asking for your endorsement and your support for the 14th Congressional District. I believe I have the experience, the accountable governance, and unapologetic advocacy for marginalized communities and democracy itself, and I would be honored to earn your support and your endorsement of the Tri-Valley Democratic Club.
Thank you, Victor. Really appreciate you being
Thank
here.
you, Victor.
We
You're
just
welcome.
dropped your website in the chat for folks who want to learn more. But thank you again for spending the evening with us, and have a great rest of your night.
Wonderful. Thank you, everybody. Enjoy President's Day.
Perfect. Thanks, Victor.
You're welcome.
We will move on to our next candidate who has joined us. I see, I'm going to remove Victor's spotlight here. And Matt Ortega is in the room with us. Matt, let me pin you. There you go. Matt Ortega is going to be our next and other candidate for tonight, running for the 14th Congressional District. Matt, again, to reiterate format, you'll have 5 minutes for an opening statement to talk about yourself and your campaign and your candidacy. Then we'll open up the floor to questions from the club and folks on the call. And then we'll give you a minute at the end to close us out if you'd like that. But in the meantime, we'll turn it over to you, and you can feel free to get started whenever.
Great. Well, thank you very much. I appreciate the opportunity to speak with you all. I know I'm not familiar to most people in this group, so I'll just give a little background on where I come from and my history. I grew up in Hayward, and then my family moved to Danville not long after my mother passed away from cancer, and my father remarried. And so I went to high school at San Ramon Valley High School in Danville before I went to the University of Arizona. After graduation from college, I came back, and the first campaign I ever worked on was actually to take on one of the last Republican members of Congress in the Bay Area. I worked with Defenders Wildlife Action Fund to take down Richard Pombo in 2006. And we were ultimately successful in that with a coalition of environmental groups and labor unions, and obviously Jerry McNerney's campaign. And after that, I got bit by the campaign bug. I very much enjoyed that fight. I very much relish, standing up for people against those who are trying to inflict harm on them. So I worked on healthcare with Health Access and SEIU in California in 2007 during Schwarzenegger's year of health reform. And then after that, I went to the DNC and worked under Governor Howard Dean in the 2008 cycle to elect Barack Obama. And it turns out that my background, which is digital in focus, I'm a designer, web developer by trade. I was a blogger, part of the Netroots, before I got into working on campaigns. And it turns out that doing that kind of work was much more gainful at the time in DC. So I lived out there for over a decade. I worked on a clean energy climate coalition after the Waxman-Markey bill passed. And tried to get that through the Senate. Ultimately, we were unsuccessful, but it was a very unique coalition. It had climate environmental groups allied with labor unions, which has not historically always been two groups that come together. It also included veterans to talk about the national security implications of climate change. And from there, I went and joined a digital consulting firm that was run by Howard Dean's executive director of the DNC. From there, I went to, there I worked on with labor unions. We worked with AFL to get Janet Yellen on as the Fed chair, worked to stop the Keystone XL pipeline, among other efforts, before I went to Hillary Clinton's presidential campaign, where I was digital communications director in the 2016 cycle, where I worked through the primary before I came back to DC. And then from there, I worked on the Sinclair Tribune merger to put a stop to it. It's kind of a strange bedfellows campaign. It was a lot of left of center groups working with right of center organizations like Newsmax to put a stop to that, which was ultimately successful. That merger did not go through. And from there, I went to work at a consulting firm called Middle Seat, which was kind of made its name working for AOC in her first primary. We raised something like 80 something million dollars for Beto O'Rourke in 1 quarter for his Senate campaign, and worked with a lot of Democratic candidates and progressive organizations there before I moved back to California during the pandemic. My eldest son was born in Oakland. My wife is from East Oakland, so we wanted to be closer to family. And from there, started my own digital creative firm, again, working to elect Democratic candidates, labor unions, and progressive organizations around the country. My second son was born while I worked for myself, and so I've experienced childcare with paid leave and childcare without paid leave. Responding to client emails from the NICU on my phone was much different than the first time around when I got 12 weeks off. For me, I got into this race because I just understood as a husband, father, small business owner, and union member that this country was going in the wrong direction. I feel that we are at an inflection point. This administration has, kind of exploited the cracks and fissures in our democracy and has brought it to the brink. For me, I'm the only candidate in this race who has any national political experience. Republicans have been attacking me online and on television since I was 22 years old. And so I've been part of this fight my entire adult life. I think that's something that we need in this moment, to understand someone who understands what we're up against. I really feel that DC and taking on Donald Trump, JD Vance, folks like that is much different than the state legislature or city councils out here in the Bay Area. And so I think it requires someone with that kind of experience of taking on those kinds of fights. And if elected, I very much look forward to being part of that.
Perfect. Thanks so much, Matt. Right on time. As a reminder, I see Ellis is already in the queue, but as a reminder, if you have a question for Matt, feel free to raise your hand or drop it in the chat. We'll read it aloud.
Chip's already at the table. What are you doing?
Is somebody off mute perchance? Okay, cool. Ellis, go ahead and ask your question.
It seems like you've been in a lot of different fights, and that's real good. And I cut my chops on the Jerry McNerney campaign. So
Yeah, I remember you.
Anyway, if you get into Congress, each congressman has their favorite thing that they're champion for. For Eric, it's impeaching Trump, or at least teasing him. But the question is, what's your favorite bone to chew on as far as Congress? If you can get on some committee, what would you push for? What would you be the champion for?
Sure. Well, obviously, I think there's a lot of issues confronting us. It's kind of like I said, a five-alarm fire. I will say that, expecting that House Democrats take back the House and the Senate remains in Republican hands, and obviously Trump is president. I think our maneuvers in those first 2 years are a little limited, so we need to use that time to lay the groundwork for what our ultimate vision for 2029 would look like. But in those 2 years, I would very much want to be on the oversight committee to hold this administration accountable. I think one of the principal things that the House Democrats will need to do for those 2 years will be to hold the line, protect communities, protect people from this deportation machine. I have two sons with autism, and this administration has talked about, putting people on registries and going through their medical records. And that's something that is very important to me, to defend those communities. And where we can find wins along the way, where we can kind of shame Republicans. I think this run up to 2020 will be interesting to see how Republicans try to kind of create distance from themselves with Donald Trump in order to try to win in the future. That might create some crevices for us to pick people off to get votes through. But for the most part, I feel like these 2 years will be a matter of accountability, protecting people, and rhetorically using the platform of the office to lay the groundwork for what our ultimate long-term vision is. And that's something I'm consistently rolling out on my website, all the way from Medicare for all to building millions of affordable and sustainable homes, as well as long-term democratic reforms to ensure that our children and their children don't find themselves having to clean up our mess.
Great. Thank you, Matt. Manav, I see your hand is up. Go ahead.
Um, sorry, I think I have an echo. Hold on, real quick. Uh, okay. Something I wanted to ask Matt. Hello, by the way. Is like, so we're obviously the Tri-Valley Dems, and I asked this to Victor as well. Like, what kind of issues will you champion as the representative of our region? And like, can you also talk about like your knowledge about the issues around the Tri-Valley and basically what like what are your solutions? Like, how will you basically like help our region specifically as the member of our Congress? That's, yeah.
Sure. Well, I think for me, a lot of the same issues I've been going through, a lot of families in this area and across the country are experiencing. My wife and I, we both have good paying jobs. Our parents own the homes we grew up in, but we rent because housing is just way too expensive. And we wanted to be close enough to family with two kids that, we were not driving an hour to go see grandma and grandpa. And so that meant we had to make a tough decision to, rent out here rather than buy a home. I think that's something that across this district, across the state, as well as across the country, is a huge problem. There's a lot of different solutions, approaches to that. Everything from federal funding to help with home construction, partnering with state and local authorities on streamlining the permitting process and reducing fees. I think in the state of California, it costs 2 to 3 times as much to build a home as it is in other states, and that's something that really hurts us out here. And I think we can make that not as expensive, not as difficult, without giving up the labor and environmental protections that we really need out here. In addition to that, like I said, we have two sons. We were never able to send both of them to childcare. It's just way too expensive. It would have been more than our rent to do that. And so we only could send one child 3 days a week. And early childhood development is huge. We, even in the time that they went there, we saw a big difference when our second son, we sent him full time for the last couple months before he joined a public school preschool program for kids with special needs. The growth we saw in him just by going full time was huge, and that's something that a lot of families are missing out on. There's a lot of families out there who have to make that work because they don't work from home like my wife and I. We are very lucky in that sense that we were able to say, okay, 2 days a week, our 3-year-old could stay with us. A lot of families out there don't have that luxury. They have to find ways to make do to be able to provide for their family. So that's another thing that I would champion as well. And on top of that, same thing with healthcare. My wife and I run a small business for digital creative. My insurance is through her insurance through Kaiser. Our premiums nearly doubled this year, and that made us one of the luckier ones. For a lot of folks, 3, 4, 5 times the premiums. There's probably going to be, I've seen different estimates about the millions of people who are ultimately going to just forego insurance because they can't afford those premiums. That's a financial burden on families, on individuals, but also businesses. Just barely over 50% of small businesses offer to cover any part, whether partial or full, health insurance premiums of their employees. And that number is going down. It's down 5% from a couple of years ago. So, that's one of the reasons why I support Medicare for All, to lift that financial burden off the shoulders of families and businesses. A lot of people give up wages to get employer-sponsored health care, and that's money that could be in their pocket for other things like childcare, like electricity and gas bills. And so that's something that I think in the long term I would be fighting for. In the short term, obviously trying to draw back some of those Medicaid cuts, the enhanced ACA subsidies. I think that's one of those areas where a lot of skittish Republicans are we can weaken them to kind of shame them into passing some form of that in the short term. And in the long term, push for Medicaid for all, Medicare for all, and I'm open to the implementation of that. I think there's a lot of, folks who are worried about giving up their private health insurance through their employer because it's something they fought hard to get. And so, there might be like a phase kind of expansion of it to kind of, you know, provide a proof of concept that this works, it's cheaper, it's better healthcare, so that ultimately long term we can get to full adoption. So those are some of the major things I think kind of span the district. In terms of the eastern part, the Tri Valley, I know from growing up in Danville and my first campaign, like I said, was based in Pleasanton. Um, Obviously the sprawl, transportation, BART is going through a lot of things right now. These are all things that, as a member of Congress, I certainly would want to partner with local officials on to figure out ways to shore those up. I'll be the first to admit that I'm not a policy wonk. I'm not going to be able to bust out actuarial tables and say, if we do this, this is what's going to happen. So I certainly will be looking to folks on the ground, organizations that I respect and have worked with for a long time, to kind of provide eyes and ears on ways that we can work together. But in terms of fighting in Congress to pass these things, that's something that I've had many years of experience at.
Thank you, Matt. Thank you for
Thank
the very detailed answer. I will call on questions as I saw them in order. Hopefully, this one will be not as long an answer, but Stephanie asks, will you accept campaign contributions from APAC?
So I've already reached out to the Track APAC folks to seek their endorsement and not to accept APAC money. I've obviously been very concerned about what's going on in Gaza and this board of peace nonsense. So in short, no, I will not be accepting APAC money or corporate money. And I've also signed the No Fossil Fuel Pledge and the Purge Palantir Pledge as well.
Perfect. Thanks, Matt. Neonth has a question. At a point in time when the legislative branch is abdicating power to the executive, why do you think you are better than the other candidates who have more legislative experience at such an important turning point in our nation's history?
That's a good question. I think for me, like I said, the 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 beast is quite different in DC. Who you're up against and the tricks they pull and the games they play is something that I feel like a lot of Democrats over years have just not been very good at navigating. And I think part of that is, I am someone who, as an activist, have followed what Republicans have been doing. My father was a very right-wing person, with that long 2-hour commute each way. It was all talk radio, come home to Fox News. I kind of saw up close how Republicans operate and what animates them. And, like I said, for these next 2 years, it's going to be basically a street fight between House Democrats and Republicans about where we go and how we move these next 2 years. And, I think specifically, where the most action is going to be on oversight and accountability. Just the sheer, staggering level of corruption that this administration goes through. A lot of it just gets missed, goes down the memory hole because there's a whole new thing to worry about. And that, for me, that's going to be one of the things where the contours of the 2028 election will be fought, and potentially, hopefully, a Democratic trifecta in 2029 is kind of set up to achieve. So I think, for me, I relish that fight. Like I said, I've been taking on Republicans like this since I was in my early 20s. And I think this is a specific moment where, regular people are stepping up to take control of the situation is one that we've seen play out in Minneapolis. It's the activists on the ground who really kind of turn the tide of that situation. Whereas like a lot of the politicians were more constrained. And so I think, having that kind of mindset going into Congress where, you understand the assignment, what the stakes are and what we're up against is something that I think is very important. And one of the reasons why I decided to run, because I wasn't sure that the folks that I expected to run were up to that, and maybe they proved me wrong, but at this point, I felt like the need to run to force that conversation, to force that issue. Do they understand what we're up against, and what we need to do, especially in the short term, to ensure that we're not stuck in this. We don't lose it all for the long term, because once you lose democracy, it's not easy to bring it back. It normally takes many years or decades, and usually with a lot of suffering along with that. And I think that takes a certain kind of attitude and approach to politics that far too often we don't see enough of, honestly.
Thanks, Matt. Jackie, I see your hand is up.
Yes. Housing. You did give us some more information other than just building housing, what you're going to do. But what can we do other than just build, 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 build? What can we do to help get people in home ownership, and what
Yeah.
kind of programs do you envision? I see a lot of programs in Santa Cruz. I look at property down there all the time, and they have all kinds of different programs that are based on income that you can't even purchase certain homes. They're only available to certain buyers. So what kind of ideas other than just build, build, build? Because if we don't have BART out here,
Yeah,
God forbid what it's going to be like with a million more homes.
sure.
Thank you.
That's one of the things that, on my website, I talk about incentives for home builders and private buyers to sell to first-time home buyers. Right now, the average age of first-time home buyers has crossed 40 years old, the highest on record. It was, I think, 30 years, like 10 or 12 years ago, if I'm not mistaken. The average age of all home buyers is now 59, up from 49. And so basically we're losing, younger generations are losing out on owning their own home, which has always been kind of the marquee idea of what the American dream ultimately was. And so with that, there needs to be, like I said, incentives for selling to first-time home buyers, but also down payment assistance. I know here in Alameda County and across California, there's a number of programs that are relatively pretty generous. I mean, in Alameda County, the income limit is $300,000 for a down payment assistance, but it's not enough. A lot of homes out here. The house I keep up on Zillow on the homes that I lived in out here. I lived in Hayward off Harder and Mission, and then was partially raised at my grandmother's house in Oakland. And I keep up on those. And we sold our house in Hayward in 1996 for $160,000, and it's going for almost $900,000 now. And I sometimes drive past it because I take my sons to the park over there from time to time. And it's not like they've done any additions to the home or anything like that. It's just exponentially increased in value. My grandmother's house was sold for 500,000, and it's almost $1 million now. And 20% down payment on that is very steep for a lot of people. Like I said, my wife and I make good money, and that's not something we could cobble together for a very long time with high cost of living. So I think incentives for helping out first-time buyers, I think, is really key. But also on top of that, rental assistance for folks who, a lot of people aren't going to own a home, and some of them don't want to. I mean, there's young people who are in school who don't need to own a home right away, but they're going to school full time, and they may need some assistance in staying in their homes. On top of that, I think obviously houselessness is a major concern out here. I've seen it grow. I live on the edge of San Leandro and San Lorenzo, and just driving up to Bayfair area, you just see the amount of encampments grow along the railroad tracks. And so there needs to be housing also for folks to get them back up on their feet, get them mental health services, because a lot of them struggle with mental health, and help them be more self-sustaining so that they're not living on the streets anymore. And so I think there's a lot of different avenues to do that. And I certainly, like I said, would be looking to folks on the ground in terms of what they think needs to happen, where the pain points are. A lot of these things, I see a lot of areas where there's difficulty getting housing built, or difficulty allowing homeowners to be able to create ADUs in their backyard. My wife's family, they live in East Oakland, and they converted the garage into a rental property. They're Ethiopian immigrants, and so there's always someone fresh off the boat, as they say, looking for a place to live. And so, allowing people to open up their homes like that, I think is also something that will help decrease pressure on housing. But I think there's a lot of different avenues we could take, and the federal government can step in with funding or assistance on regulatory issues, or, like I said, fees in other areas. Manufactured homes that are opened up to traditional mortgages without some of the restrictions might be a solution. So I think there's a lot of different avenues, and I certainly would be open to what those ultimately look like. But it certainly begins with um, federal funding and assistance to first-time home buyers who then free up rental properties for other people to live. So that's where I would start. But like I said, I'm open to different avenues.
Great. Thanks, Matt. I see two more questions in the chat, and then I think for time purposes, we'll need to cut it off there. But Rana asks, what legislation would you propose to place more limits on the executive branch?
So one of the first things I rolled out in my campaign was a slate of what I call democratic reforms that could be passed either by Congress or require a constitutional amendment. I think one of the things that doesn't get talked about as much is restricting presidential pardons. This president has really shown the corrupt use of those pardons, where he's basically getting money from people who he pardoned from really serious financial or otherwise violent crimes, and either a family member or they personally are giving him money. And the Supreme Court has ruled that the Congress cannot weigh in on that. It's a plenary power, and so it'll require a constitutional amendment to place restrictions on it. I'm not in favor of banning it outright. I think there's room for clemency at the executive level where it's necessary. Certainly, it's been used for good reason, throughout presidencies. I've outlined a number of restrictions that could be placed on it, prohibitions on allowing people who have donated to the president's campaign from receiving a pardon, uh, prohibitions on immediate family members of the president, prohibitions on people who are involved in crimes related to the executive. I think there's a number of different ways. I've seen other folks float a commission that is reviews pardons. I think there's a number of different ways that we could approach that, but that's certainly one that stands out to me that doesn't get talked about a lot. In addition to that, I think there are things we could do at the congressional level that don't require the long-term fight over a constitutional amendment. I have a lot of those outlined on my website at mattortega.com if you're interested. But for me, it goes from anywhere between I'm open to expanding the House of Representatives from the 1929 cap on 435 members. When Congress was first created, it was one representative to 50,000 people, and now it's one representative to over 700,000. And for me, I think when members of Congress are closer to their constituents or more accessible to them, government is better. I intend, if elected, to be as accessible as I possibly can. I'm very open to uh, uh, responding to email, on social media, being in person, responding to questions. I am not going to be someone who hides from that. But 700,000 people is a lot of people to meet for one person. So, I think there's a range of things that we could consider, and some of them are a lot easier, I think, to achieve. But I do think we really need to think about the kind of post-Trump era, almost like Reconstruction, with some big, bold reforms that will take time, that will be fights, but it'll never happen if you don't ask for it, if you don't fight for it. That's always been my attitude.
Thank you, Matt. Question from Mark. Matt, will you support funding for science, NSF, healthcare, NIH, CDC, environment, EPA, including funding for long COVID and related ME/CFS, other chronic illnesses that are disabling millions? Eric Swalwell and Mark DeSaulnier have been very supportive, autism also needs a lot of R&D at NIH.
100%. I think the cancellation of a lot of these grants over the last year we're going to feel the effects of that for many years to come. Like I said, my mother passed away from cancer. That, the HPV vaccination, which is a main driver of cervical cancer, came into being because of years of vaccination research. mRNA vaccinations help that technology was opening the door to potentially a cure for cancer, and they basically forced Moderna to abandon mRNA research altogether because they're refusing to provide federal funding for these things. It's unbelievable to me, honestly. It's the kind of thing that I've described it as an act of national self-immolation. People were going to die because of this, and it's absurd. And so I will certainly 100% fight for restoring funding, restoring those grants. Unfortunately, a lot of those researchers and scientists, they're encamping off to England or France or Germany, where they won't have to be under the potential threat of a Republican president coming back in and pulling their funding again. And so we're facing a brain drain here because of that. And you mentioned autism. Like I said, I have two sons with autism. My eldest son has what's called a PDA profile, a demand avoidance profile. It's something that is not widely accepted in the United States, but more broadly in the UK. And that's something that we see where we're kind of lagging behind the rest of the world in a lot of these areas. And so that's definitely somewhere, one area that, just in my own personal experience, I certainly would like to see more money behind, because we're, as parents, we're it's something that we've long struggled to try to get our handle on, because there's not a lot of resources specifically for that particular profile here in the States. And here in Alameda County, there's a lot more resources available to us than elsewhere in the country. My stepsister worked on autism in Texas, and it's a whole different world out there. So absolutely, 100%, and certainly would look to work with folks on that as well.
Thanks, Matt. I know we just got a couple more questions in the chat. We're getting close on time. I'll just ask one more really quick, because Shauna, I know, hasn't had a chance to ask a question yet to you, Matt. But as a tech guy, what's your take on AI and on data centers?
Yes. So, in my professional capacity, I had someone reach out to me asking about working on a design development project for a data center. I declined. Generally speaking, I'm not a fan of data centers for a lot of reasons, not just environmental and energy costs related to them, but also just what this administration is using our data for. Allowing Palantir to basically weasel its way into the federal government for who knows at this point, right? I mean, that's one of the things that I think the fight over oversight next cycle is going to be really key, is finding out what do they even have access to. That said, I think for me as a web developer, I think there's very limited uses of AI that are useful. I've used it to help me debug code. But I think where we get into trouble is where it's asked subjective questions that are more debatable, and it presents them as fact, and people just accept that. And on top of that, you have the larger issue of AI generated material, images, video. I'm very concerned about where that leads. We're already kind of seeing people kind of not even understanding what they're looking at as AI. I think if you go on Facebook, a lot of times I'll see AI stuff that, family members of mine are responding to as if it's real. And it's only going to get worse, honestly. So I'm very concerned about it. I think there's a number of regulatory approaches that we could consider to try to put a stop to that, or at least provide people with the tools to understand, the issues related to it. Unfortunately, I think that the regulatory framework has not kept up with the technology, and it's kind of a situation where the cat is out of the bag, and it's going to be really hard to reel in. And so I think it's going to be a difficult situation to deal with long term, and I'm honestly very concerned about it.
Thanks
Thank
for
you, Matt.
answering that. Thanks for lifting up my question.
Absolutely. Thank you. All right, Matt, we'll give you 1 minute to close out if you have any last concluding thoughts, and the time is yours.
Sure. So for me, like I said, I got in this race because I felt this moment, really demanded that regular people step up. I've worked on campaigns for over 20 years, so I'm not new to this fight, but I am a first-time candidate. And Eric Swalwell's decision to run for governor in November kind of really provided a short runway. No sooner did I file that it was a lot of candidate questionnaires and endorsements coming up. So, for me, the biggest thing in this campaign has been about I've described it as fighting for an affordable future and the freedom to live it. I think a lot of the conversation in our politics is around, do you focus on economic issues? Do people care about democracy? And for me, I feel that these are two sides of the same coin. You can't really have one without the other. And so I've tried to describe them under an umbrella of freedom. That's something that is a pet project of mine for many years. That going back to the Bush years, where he kind of made freedom into a punchline. But with this president and this Republican Party that truly shows it does not believe in traditional American values as we believe them. I think it's created an opportunity for us to stand up as people who love their country, who are at the forefront of upholding those values. And it's a way that I try talking about these issues where the getting health care without crippling medical debt is something that is a freedom to me. You don't have that burden on your shoulders, and you're allowed to live your life. Your ability to get a college education without being saddled with student loan debt. That's something that I've experienced in my own life. Delayed ownership of a car, delayed ownership of a house, delayed starting of a family, in large part because I owed student loans, and I'm now thankfully under about $3,000 left at this point. And so for me, I got into this race because I wasn't sure that the folks who ultimately would end up running for the seat understood the situation as I feel I see it. And so for me, I would very much appreciate your endorsement, your support. And if you have any more questions, I hope you feel free to email me at mattortega.com or reach out to me on social media. I'm an open book. I want to be accessible. I pride myself on being honest and upfront with folks, and so feel free to reach out, and I hope to earn your support.
Thank you, Matt. Thanks for being here. Thanks for making the
Thank you.
time. And thank you everybody for the questions. Matt, of course, we're going to have the rest of our meeting. You're not obligated to stay here if you don't want to or have other things to do. But thank you to both Victor and Matt for being here. Thank you for your time. And just to reiterate some of the points made earlier in the meeting about sort of logistics and bylaw stuff, we will have an endorsement vote on this race for 14th Congressional District at our April meeting. We will next month, as a preview, have some candidates running for California governor come talk to us. We will be having our endorsement vote for that race in our March meeting. And if you would like to vote in that meeting, today is the last day per our bylaws to pay your dues. So again, we'll drop the link to our website to pay dues in the chat. If you just want to vote in this particular race, you still have some time. But thank you to everybody who's joining us today. Really appreciate all the questions. And I'll turn it back to Jackie for more club business stuff.
Okay, let me get my agenda up here. Okay, next on the agenda. Last month we heard from Alois Hammond regarding, or actually 2 months ago in January. Was it not? When did we? I guess it was January. We did hear from Alois Hammond regarding Make Polluters Pay. This was a bill that was stalled in the legislature, in the state legislature. And we felt that it was important to bring this issue up. And there was a resolution that was submitted to the club. Let me get that link here so we can review it. And the resolution, in essence, is our way of saying we support this bill in principle. why we support the bill. And then if our members endorse this resolution, then Alois, as well as Ellis Goldberg, plan to meet with our legislatures and find out what we can do to get this legislation back on track. So I'm going to share this with the room. Let me see if I can share this. Okay. So this is the legislation, or this is the resolution that went out, and I'll go ahead and read it, and then I'll let, if Alois is on, Richard, if you could pin her, and then we'll go through some of her facts.
Jackie,
And
can you make the text larger? Do you have that capability? I don't know what you're looking at.
Can you see it? Is that
Yeah,
doing it?
that's much better.
I'm gonna see if I can read it. Whereas climate change in California contributes to disasters such as fire, flood, poor air quality, danger to human health, and that these disasters are exacerbated by corporations who pollute excessive amounts of carbon and greenhouse gases. Whereas Californians pay taxes to fund a disaster fund that helps cities, occupies lands, parks, and more that have cost billions of dollars for a single disaster, like the ones in Los Angeles and Paradise, and that home insurance rises after major disasters. Therefore, be it resolved that corporations which emit very significant amounts of carbon and greenhouse gases be made to contribute to the reparation in line with the essence of SB 684 and AB 1243. And that's Senate Bill 684 and California Assembly Bill 1243. Be it further resolved that Democrats becoming cognizant of the claim that gas prices will be raised is contradicted by four economists from the well-respected economics department of UC Berkeley, and that even if they are incorrect, the savings in taxes to fund the disaster fund and homeowners insurance increases will be much greater than any increase in gas prices. That is the resolution. Also included is some, this was provided by Alois in an attempt to clarify some of the misinformation or provide feedback on the misinformation on this bill. Is Alois on? I can't see anybody since I'm sharing the screen. Is Alois on? Yes, she is. Alois, can you unmute yourself? Alois? Okay. Here's some of the facts or false claims. Climate Superfund is an unconstitutional tax. This is a compensatory fee based on documented damages, not a tax. Similar policies have been legally upheld, including California's Childhood Lead Poisoning Prevention Act. And I don't think I'm going to read all of these, but this has been provided to membership. I guess I'll just open it up for questions, comments, before we decide if we want to endorse this. I'm going to go ahead and stop this share. Does anybody have any feedback on this? Ellis?
I had occasion to talk to Eloise and Van Rainey about this. Apparently, Rebecca Bauer-Cahan and the governor are opposed to this. And apparently, Van has had conversations with various people about this. I'm not sure exactly who. Maybe he's on here today, I don't know. But he indicated that, first of all, you can't legislate something that's illegal in the past. And what this bill said is that the polluters for the last 20 years will be punished now. And that's kind of moving the goalposts in a legalistic fashion. What you were doing for the last 20 years is wrong, and now we're going to make it illegal rather than it was illegal to begin with. So that was part of apparently Rebecca's concern, although I'm not sure. I asked Eloise and Van Rainey to get together on the phone. In fact, as I sent them both each other's contact information to discuss this, how you want to proceed, because I think we should have our ducks in a row before we march into Rebecca's office and ask her what's going on. And I'm not sure that that's happened yet.
And I think Alois just, she may not be able to unmute herself. I'm not sure what's going on there, but I thought I saw her chime in here a second ago on text.
Alois, are you able to say anything right now? I think you're unmuted.
Maybe her sound's not connected in the
Okay.
little drop down. Well, her comment was lead paint was also in the past, but they were able to hold folks accountable for that. And Anne, did you want to unmute yourself and make your comment? I
Are
see
you referring
something.
to me, Anne Brown?
Yes,
Okay.
yes.
Yeah, that was interesting, your comment about legality. I have read through the bill and I have not noticed or remember that it was claiming that past greenhouse gas emissions would now be claimed illegal, but it's merely seeking to get on a 20-year plan the greenhouse gas emission, the top producers of those fossil fuel companies to start paying for the damage that has occurred and is occurring as a result of their sale of gasoline over the last 20 years. And we have that data. We know exactly how much greenhouse gases was produced from that gasoline. And so it's not, in my understanding, claiming that it was illegal, but it's simply trying to get them to pay their fair share for the increasing sky-high costs of dealing with the damage done to our communities.
To be clear, it wasn't my position. It's what Van told me was the objection of either the governor or Rebecca. Okay?
Yes,
So
thank you for
that's
clarifying
not
that.
my personal argument. I'm just purveying it.
And Ellis, I believe our intent was, we knew that they were against this bill and had voted against it. That's why the bill is currently dead. But we wanted to reach out and show that we were still in support of it, want to know what the objections were, specifically why, is it that they're afraid the oil companies are just going to pick up and leave California and, they're just letting them bully us? I don't know.
We're definitely on the same page. I agree that we say, the club should say, this is a good idea, and you should figure out some way to legally implement it. But also, we have to take into account what the governor's saying, what Rebecca's saying, and possibly future governors, because it doesn't look like this is going to get out the door during this governor's tenure. So we're talking about the next governor. So all of those things. And we should say we favor this, but figure out some way that you can swallow it.
Manav, do you have a question?
Yeah, I just wanted to make some comments, just like about supporting this bill. Like, I think first of all, we should support this bill. And I know, like in my work in Fremont, we're trying to get city council to make a like a what's it called? Proclamation, not proclamation. Basically to pass
Resolution?
something. Yeah, basically to pass something to say that we support the funding of, or we support this bill, and we can, like, I know through my research, just to let you all know, because I'm more on like where the money comes from. Basically this bill has been like super has been basically done, like they've been lobbying, big oil has been lobbying against this bill, and across the country too. Basically, like the APA has spent $500,000 in ads. There was a video that caught Joe Manchin, former Senator Joe Manchin, that's saying that they're going to spend $112 million into lobbying for this effort. So I think anything that we can do to like stop this in a statewide level, and also push our members of Congress to also say that they will support this bill, is something that we should kind of like make a position on. And so that's just my position. Like, we should advocate for this position and put some more effort into also making sure that we hold these people accountable, especially since our assembly member is taking donations from big oil and oil, like oil donations. That's something that we should also press them on as well.
I'd like to.
Any other comments? Oh, go
Yeah,
ahead.
I'd like
Go
to
ahead,
address a few things. One, the bill is not dead. What it is, it's kind of gone dormant. It does not have a current bill number in the Assembly or Senate, but it is not dead. It is simply going to be reintroduced with a new bill number in both the Assembly and House in 2027. So in a way, we were given this year to build support, wide base of support, which has been very good for the timing, because there are a lot of youth that are really behind this bill, but they have had things like college applications and other priorities in their lives. But we expect that the youth support for this will continue to grow, and that we need this year to really build support at a grassroots level with as many organizations, including our city councils, as possible. And we have a dynamic youth group in Fremont who are working on that Fremont City Council resolution. So that's exciting. And what we've seen happen, this happened in another district with Aragin, I think his name is. Once he saw that 5 of his cities in his district passed resolutions, then he supported the bill. So we can see that once we get to a critical mass of our communities, that we will get some movement from our state legislatures. They will feel that, little nudge and some pressure to go forward with that. So this endorsement would also help us move forward a lot.
Thank you.
Wonderful. There she is.
Well,
Welcome.
I got off my desktop and went on my iPad. I don't know what's going on, but anyway. So here I am, but it sounds like people don't need me to express their opinions.
Well, since you've unmuted yourself, do you want to address any additional like falsehoods that have been out there that you want to?
Well, there were
any other highlights.
There are 4 of them. One of them is that the gas prices will go up. Well, that's false, because according to these economists in Berkeley, and Berkeley's economics department is well known all over the world as being one of the best. And what they're saying is that the profits from some of these companies is so huge, and the amount that they want to take is so small, it's not going to bother them. Furthermore, it's like the rule is in the past. It's something like 20 billion tons of pollution. I don't know what gas that is. And there are only 2 or 3 gas or oil companies that meet that. So there are not only the ones that don't meet that won't have to pay. There's also, Costco and lots of other places. So that is believed to be false by these economists. Let's see, what were the other concerns? I had a list of them.
Yeah, I think they were shown, weren't they, or discussed?
Yeah, let me bring it back up. I'll
The
let me-
Mythbuster sheet. There's
Yeah,
a really good graphic, infographic showing the percentage of the profits that
there.
these companies are making and how little it is, echoing what Eloise just said.
Yeah, that's the facts that I got from. I'm in the environmental group committee of Indivisible, and they gave me a whole packet of stuff that was very informative.
Yeah, I'd like to echo that the American Petroleum Institute has identified this bill as one of their top 4 priorities for fighting against. And so they are going to inundate our state with a lot of money to fight this and, with misinformation and so forth. So be aware. One of the concerns that I believe maybe Newsom raised was about energy security. He felt that this could lead the greenhouse gas producers to close more refineries and that we would lose our capacity to generate the energy that we needed. But in fact, what we really need is we need to use this money to quickly transition to renewable energy and make our grid much more resilient and efficient. And that will be the real security for this state, not relying on our fossil fuel companies into the future. And we all know why.
Because we can't trust them.
Well, and then also in terms of cost, they will use this money to make communities that are resilient, from disasters, and so that we will not have to be paying it. Right now, we are paying for disasters. California, our taxes, our home insurance are paying for this. And it'll be much cheaper, even if they raise gas prices to, get away from that. And there's so many other, it's in terms of the actual gas companies, there are many of them, and it does not affect all of them. I mean, and it's a certain time frame that they have.
Yeah, I think
So
if we think
go
about,
ahead.
paying to prepare for sea level rise now, the price is so much less than if we wait until properties are destroyed. I just read the Sunday Chronicle article about Sausalito, which I know very well, and the numbers were staggering about preparing that community for the type of sea level rise they're expecting versus taking steps now to prepare. And that's what money like this would enable communities to do. And that's just one example. Of course, there's wildfire and there's flooding of fresh water. There's lots of other issues out in those communities. And another one is air pollution itself is a killer in the Central Valley and the LA Basin. And we have issues with air quality here as well. So that is another thing that this money could help improve in our state and save lives.
With that, Alois, would you like to make a motion on this resolution?
Yes, I will. I move that we, as I set up the whereases and therefores, I will move that we accept that.
Okay, and I will second the motion to make the Polluters Pay Super Fund that we endorse that. I second. All in favor, say aye. Aye. Anyone opposed, say nay. The ayes have it. I will publish this and put this on our website, and Anne, it sounds like you were also the go-to person to get all the information and keeping up on this and how we can help move this bill forward and get with our legislatures and push. We will definitely push on this one.
Thank you.
As the secretary of the club, I'd like to write a press release. I'll get together with Eloise, and as Ann pointed out, we're lobbying the various city councils to do the same. So we should send the press release to those various city councils so that they know that we support this.
And it sounds like we need to start showing up to some city councils too. I need to start going to my council meeting.
and don't buy gas cars. Get EVs.
Yeah.
But do be aware that there's only so much solar and wind you could put in forever, and that's great. But you need some storage, grid storage, including for the winter when things are covered with snow or when the wind's not blowing. And so you need more storage. And a lot of that comes right now, 85% or more from China. So if there's any upsets in that, you're going to be screwed a little bit. So there's some uncertainties there, just FYI.
Okay. Other comments before we move on to the next? Okay. Pre-endorsement results are in. Let me give you guys a link to that. During the pre-endorsement, our club elected officials were able to participate in this first process, along with all of the delegates. In our region, we only voted on the Congressional District 14. And let me get the results here for you. Aisha Wahab ended up being received the endorsement in the pre-endorsement process. You had to reach 75%, and she did surpass 75%, and she will be placed on the consent calendar at the convention. So let's see, here is the results. This document has the results for all of the various races. You can see the results for each congressional district. Now we move on to the convention is this weekend. Do we have our regional director on by any chance? Do we have Victor on?
I just messaged him. I'll keep you all.
It's just sometimes he pops in, so if he's available, I'd rather have him speak. But so the convention is this weekend, along with people that have been placed on the consent calendar. We have heard
Victor just joined.
Victor. I'm gonna let Victor talk instead. Just give us an update on the convention coming up and the regional directors candidate forums that were provided. And I did send those out to all of our club members. I will send them out again. I want to thank our regional directors for providing that. And Victor, let me spotlight you for everybody, and you can give us an update. Find you. Oh, Victor, there you are.
Awesome. Thank you, Jackie. Thank you, Tri-Valley Dem. Yeah, so I mean, a couple of things. So as you all know, the California Democratic Party Endorsement Convention is coming up this weekend. It's going to be in San Francisco at the Moscone Center. So for those of you who are delegates and or proxies who are going to be participating, just a heads up, if you are trying to vote in your endorsement caucuses and the statewide endorsement votes for all of our statewide positions, you need to be registered and credentialed by the time we do the vote. So for Friday, Registration and credentialing is open from 3 p.m. to 8:30 p.m. And I believe for Saturday, it's open from 9 a.m. to 1 p.m. So you have to be credentialed by 1 p.m. in order to vote. The vote for the endorsement caucuses and for the statewide candidates is going to be from 5 to 7 p.m. In the evening. It is going to be done by electronic ballot. So it's not in person. It's not a paper ballot or anything. You are going to be receiving a notification via your email that you provided the party, and or via text message if you opted in. And it's going to text and email you the link in order for you to vote. You're going to fill it out. It's through Election Buddy. And that's how the voting process will be done. You're going to have a 2-hour window to vote. Once it's been 2 hours, they're going to shut it off, count the votes, and figure out who will get the endorsement for the party or if it'll be a no consensus for those races. If you are a proxy or are interested in proxying, do note that in order for you to be a proxy, your delegate had to have paid their annual dues, and you have to pay for the convention fees. In order for it to get waived, and I think this waiver is only for the annual dues, it's not for the convention fees. Unfortunately, at this point, if you're delegate and you did not receive the waiver or like paid for your convention fees, you cannot get that waived. So you have to pay the full amount, which I believe is $275 for regular registration, and I think there's like a $40 or $50 discount if you're a student or senior. So you can get the annual dues waived. In order for that to happen, the delegate has to have a written note signifying their delegate ID number, their full name, and reason for why they're seeking a waiver for their dues. That needs to be submitted to the registration credentialing desk at convention. Again, that's only to get the annual dues waived. You're probably still gonna have to pay for the convention fees. I'm gonna check in with the party tomorrow to confirm that's the case. If you're a proxy, regardless if you submitted the pre-approval online proxy form, you must bring in a physical proxy form with you. That physical proxy form has to have the delegate's wet signature on it. If it does not have a wet signature, they will not accept it. So please know that if you're a proxy, have the delegate fill out the physical form, do a wet signature. You can fill out your information later. You will turn that in at the registration credentialing area. What else? I don't know if you shared it, Jackie, but Alfred Tlu, who's one of the delegates, created an unofficial convention schedule. He does this.
I haven't seen it yet. I was waiting for it. Do you have it?
Yeah, I actually do. Let me see if I can find where it is.
Yeah, because I like to post that. I like to send that to the whole comms team. And the central committee needs, I haven't seen it come from Igor yet. It should go to the whole committee.
Yeah, I think Manav just dropped it in the chat. I also just dropped it.
Okay, great.
So that's that Google Sheet is pretty up to date, and I know Alfred does a really great job of constantly updating it throughout the weekend. That is your one-stop shop as an attendee to know about all the different events that are happening that are official Kadem business and also unofficial Kadem business. So it should have like all the different candidates, like events, all the different like organizations that are doing their own activities and stuff, when the caucuses meet, when the committees are meeting, all that kind of, so everything you want to know what's going on during convention is going to be on that Google Sheet. Definitely recommend you save it on your phone somewhere, or like, you know, send to your own email so you can have access to it throughout the weekend. So yeah, if any of you are interested in being a proxy and haven't been able to find anyone, I highly recommend you reach out either to myself or your county chair, Igor, for Alameda County. I know there's constantly delegates looking for folks because the last minute changes, can't be able to attend or whatever. And then also just to know, they're not really advertising this, but I do know like the difficulty of like affording to go to convention or whatever. But if you're a delegate or proxy, as long as you are registered and credentialed by the deadline, right, by 1 p.m. on Saturday, you don't have to be physically there at the convention in order to vote for those races, right? So if you're only able to be there for like half a day and you got to go back home for whatever reason because someone's birthday or whatever, you still will be able to technically vote because they're still going to send you your ballot to your email and or text it to you. The only issue though is if you do have any problems, like let's say you never received the email or it got lost or something like that, or like it's not allowing your vote to come through, the only way to resolve that problem or issue is to go in person to the voting support room, right? So if you have any voting issues, you have to go do that in person. But if you have no issues, technically you can be off site and vote. They'll count your vote. There's no issues. The only reason why I say that is because I do know some of our delegates in Region 6 unfortunately can't be at the convention for the entire duration. And so I'm just letting folks know so that they don't feel guilty or think that, oh no, I can't vote or participate because I'm not there for all 3 days, right? You don't have to do that. For example, I'm at work all day Friday. I'm not going to show up until like late in the evening, but I'll be there for the rest of the weekend, right? But as long as I'm credentialed, I'll still be able to vote for, the endorsement vote that's going to happen Saturday evening. I will say though, if you're going to attend, please do your best to stay for up until the end of the Sunday general session. So the Sunday general session is where we finalize all of the endorsements. So all the votes that are going to happen during the Saturday evening, all the pre-endorsement votes that have already happened, in order for them to be final and legitimate, they have to be approved by the entire body. And that vote happens during the Sunday general session, right? So please do your best to stay for the duration of it. It's from 10 a.m. to 12 p.m. Most of the time it doesn't run over. There's been a couple instances where it happens, but it should be a pretty simple session. Like we should get it all done within the 2 hours. So knowing how close it is to us, please do your best to stay for the duration of it. I think that's basically it. And then obviously Jackie is going to share out the links to the candidate forums that we hosted the last 3 weekends. I highly recommend you check it out. It was a really great opportunity for us to hear from these candidates and get some more insight before we have to do our final vote for Saturday. So definitely check it out if you haven't.
I do have one question, Victor. We have a club member who wanted to get an observer pass. It looks like that deadline has passed. Potentially he might want to be a proxy. Can I send that information to you? I've already pinged on the central committee, but I think that they have other folks in mind for that seat. So
yeah,
I don't know if there's other proxies that are available that perhaps he could participate under.
Yeah, I can do my best to help out. Another thing you can do, this is a little secret. They do provide significant other observer passes, and they usually let you buy those at the convention. So that person could potentially find a delegate and pretend to be their significant other and get the observer pass. I've done that.
I figured my hyphenated name. I thought about that, but I thought the hyphenated name would be a giveaway.
Listen, they don't question it. When we had the executive board meeting here, when we had the executive board meeting in Visalia, my friend came and I was able to get her a significant other observer pass, no questions asked. We just paid for it. We were good to go. So they might be able to do the same thing if they can't find a way to be a proxy.
Okay. I'll think about that one. Anything else? Oh, let me give you the link to the candidate interviews. Again, there are 3 different forums: a regional directors candidate forum for governor, all the various administrative offices, and the financial officers. So that was sent out in our notice, but let me post it in the chat as well. And these are very, very helpful. Very, very helpful. Any last minute thing, Victor? Anything else? Okay. Moving on to, go ahead.
Sorry, I'm just going to drop in the chat. So this is the endorsement guide for the statewide offices. So if you want to learn more about the procedures for that, because you're supporting whoever for governor or whatever, and you want to make sure they win, it's all there. I believe in order for a candidate to get the endorsement from the party, they have to get at least 60% of the vote, right? So like For example, if you're supporting Swallow, you need to have 60% of the total voters for the statewide race in order to get the party endorsement. If no candidate gets 60%, it will be a no consensus race. And basically it's up to the candidates to kind of duke it out and make it to the top two in the June primary. After
Thank you. Okay. Chair reports. Richard, you already touched on this quite a bit the next couple months. What do you want to just touch on it one last time? Reminder what we're doing next month, and you need to become a member today if you want to vote. And if you have any question about membership, you can send me an email and I'll look it up for you. If you were a member, if you paid your dues late at the end of last year, that was carried over into this year. So you're still a member. So we don't penalize you because you just renewed at the end of the year. We give you a grace period and carry that on to the current year. So I can look up and let you know if you have any questions, if you paid your dues. Richard, did you want to say anything more about the endorsement? Nope.
No, other than, the same thing that I said before. The only flag that I guess like I'll have for folks is we do have several gubernatorial candidates who are coming to talk to us next month because of the number of candidates who have already committed. There is a chance, not sure yet, we're finalizing run of show and the agenda this week, but there is a chance that we will start our meeting next week, or excuse me, not next week, next month, half an hour early at 6:30 instead of 7.
Okay.
Again, the best way to keep updated on that is just check your emails. Jackie does a great job of sending out the email blast, as well as following us on socials, on our Facebook and Instagram. We will usually post details in the days before the meeting on what's going on, who's going to be joining, times, and things like that. But again, I'll make the last plug that if you want to vote and be a dues paying member who is eligible to vote in that endorsement meeting, tonight is the deadline to pay your dues to be eligible to vote. So that's all. Thanks, Jackie.
Okay. And now for the treasurer report. Alan Nakashir.
It's easy this month. For the month, we had $710 in dues. We paid in credit card fees $30.43, which gave us a net for the month of $679.57. And our ending balance was $2,865.88. And that was it. We're within $100 of what we were a year ago at this time. Also, we have 76 members. And last year at this time, we had 70.
I think we're doing great on membership.
Yep.
So far.
Well, it just started
good.
like in the last month or so.
Right. Thank
Any
you.
questions? Oh, you people are easy.
And now for the political director's report and the secretary report. Where is Ellis Goldberg? Where are you, Ellis? There you are.
Thank you, Jackie. Good meeting so far. First of all, let me thank a few of the people that called up because Sharon passed out at the Dublin protest 2 Saturdays ago. She's okay, but moving off camera. But thank you. Last month, we had 4 basic things that we spoke about. The Make Polluters Pay bill, which we discussed again tonight. The convention. The club endorsement schedule, which Richard just spoke about. And activism as an antidote for the Trump depression, I guess. And there are a lot of activities coming up. particularly a big one on O King's Day, March 20th. So much for the Secretary's report. The political director's report, almost every day people ask, how did we get into this mess? And it's a very person by the name of Andy Borowitz, and he's written a book called Profiles in Ignorance. And he talks about the evolution of what we expect from a president. And he said, in the early stages of the stage called ridicule, where you'll remember that Dan Quayle wrecked his political career by adding an E onto the word potato, spelling it wrong, showing his ignorance. Ronald Reagan wasn't that smart a guy, but he had a lot of very competent people writing for him. So when he gave a speech, he could read that teleprompter as if it was right off the top of his head. But everybody knew it was a teleprompter. That was the first stage. The second stage is acceptance. Acceptance of stupidity. Many people don't know that George W. Bush lost the congressional campaign in Texas. And he attributed the main reason he lost that campaign was that he sounded like he came from Kennebunkport, which he did. And he decided, and I remember the quote, I'll never be outbubbered again. And he suddenly started talking with a Texas accent and became the guy next door that you wouldn't mind having a beer with every once in a while. And Sarah Palin was part of that also. It didn't matter how smart you were. If you can give an off-the-cuff answer like, how's that working out for you? And we became accepting that. And now we have the third period, celebration. In the final stage, ignorance is openly embraced and even celebrated. And Donald Trump is the archetype for this. Doesn't matter how absurd he is, the only thing that matters is the dominance of the media and the entertainment value. One of Donald's mentors, aside from Roy Cohn, is Vince McMahon, the guy who made wrestling so popular. And one of the things about wrestling, and Sharon will tell you I'm a wrestling fan, is what makes wrestling popular is the bad guys. The fact is that people want to see the bad guy get beat up or something like that, or get his muttons. And you don't have a good guy unless you have a bad guy. There's nobody for the good guy to beat up. So we wound up with Trump and a following that is more interested in the entertainment value than the policy value. And that's where we stand. I don't know if this enlightens anybody or gives them any more understanding, but there's a lot of people who just watch politics for the entertainment value, and the outcomes don't matter to them. It's occurred to me, and I'm sure it's occurred to you. She wants to say something.
Tell her about the rally on every Saturday.
Oh, of course, every Saturday at noon, right where Safeway is in Dublin, right around the corner from the IBEW, we have a protest rally. It's kind of a barometer of how badly we got pissed off that week. The week that Renee Good was murdered, we had about 250 people there. The next week, when the nurse was murdered, we had about 100 people there because the murder was that morning. Last week, not this past weekend, but the prior week, we had about 100 people there. Anyway, if you want to feel better and have somebody to talk to, come on down.
And bring
You
a
will,
si-
and bring a sign,
sign.
and I have plenty of extra signs. Okay,
Okay,
so maybe we'll see you there.
thank you. Mark your calendars. The next Snow Kings Day is March 28th. Richard and I have been talking with Kyoko from Tri-Valley Indivisible, potentially partnering with them and co-sponsoring the event. So I'll be working with Kyoko. If anybody would like to help work on that with us, drop me an email, send me a note, say, hey, I'd like to help you work on this. I know that Indivisible has their trained peacekeepers, so that's an important part of this. So they are really leading this, but we want to partner with them and probably help support them with our insurance as a partner, because we do have our insurance that will cover us for protests. So I'll be working with Kyoko again. If anybody else would like to work with us and help do that, either drop your name in the chat, or let me put my email in here again. Drop me an email and I will get you on the team helping. Where it's going to be, not sure, probably Livermore. We're not sure if it's going to be in Livermore or Dublin yet. So stand by on the location, more to come on that.
Jackie,
Yes,
make sure that our insurance is paid up. If I remember
it
correctly,
is.
it's due
It
in
is.
March.
It is.
And I also inquired when we
August.
had the Women's March if they would cover it of something of that size. And they were very reluctant. So check that out.
Well, we do have liability insurance. We purchased that last summer. So it goes August to August. So our insurance does, and they ask how many rallies do you plan to hold? How many in-person meetings do you plan to hold? So that was all part of the questionnaire, but I can follow up with what's her name? The insurance person at the party. We can double check. We'll make sure that we're covered. We can also
Thank you.
obtain a one time a year special event that's free that the party will cover, but we do have liability insurance.
Yeah, at our rallies, the indivisible people can also call the police. They have phones.
Well,
So,
everybody does.
yeah, so it's protected. And
Oh, don't worry.
sometimes
The police are there. They're made aware ahead of time. That's part of their process for a
Yeah.
safe protest, and they're well aware when we have our the big ones. They're, Isabel? I see one of our peacekeepers on. Both Isabel and Manov are peacekeepers with Indivisible. So more to come on that. Any other new announcements, new business? Anyone? We're
Yeah,
just
can
slightly over.
Yeah, can I talk real quick about the regional transit measure?
Okay. Oh, well, let me get the recording back going. I don't know why my recording stopped.
It just did.
How weird. How weird. That is weird. This is the second time it's done that to me.
Okay,
Let me
no
record.
worries.
It's
Go
back.
ahead, Mana.
Okay, so yeah, basically I wanted to basically quickly get support from this group to support the regional transit measure that's up on the ballot in November. For those who don't know, the regional transit measure is basically a in this county a half-cent sales tax to basically help fund our local transit agencies that are run by the MTC. So for example, for us, that would be LAFTA or Wheels, but also BART and Ace Train. And basically, I feel like we should be one of the groups that support this measure because it will help bring a lifeline to public transit that a lot of people in the Tri-Valley really rely on. For example, for like just to kind of talk about like my circumstance.
Let me stop you right there, Mana, because this is now we're going into a long
Okay.
discussion. We're literally 4 minutes at the end of our meeting. So let me do this. Let me give you a platform where we can do this ledge justice. So I want you to hold this thought, and we will put this on the agenda so it can get a reasonable amount of time that people can ask questions and you can do a proper presentation. Is that
Okay,
fair?
sounds good. Yes, sounds fair.
Okay, so
I've
we will make
scheduled somebody. I've scheduled somebody from Bay Area Transit Connection to speak to the club in May.
Well, I
beautiful.
think
There we go.
basically, I think it's just important that we get support for this as soon as possible. So like I don't mind putting out like something that we did for MPP today, and like we vote on it next month. But
Well, next
yeah,
month we have 6 candidates for governor coming. Remember, we just said we
yeah,
have to extend our meeting a half an hour just for the governor's race. So next meeting's booked, and the following meeting we have our the rest of our candidates for CA 14th. I think that May would be a really good timeline. We also have some folks that want to come and speak to us for lieutenant governor, and I'm also trying to schedule that around May timeline. So let's put that on the agenda. I want you to get with Ellis so that we're coordinating this together in a cohesive presentation. And then we'll have the gentleman come and speak, and then you can present as well. I assume it's probably the same legislation. I assume, but I just don't want to cut you off after 2 minutes. So let's hold this for another discussion and put a real either a resolution or legislation number behind it that we can do something official. Any other new business? Transit. I got you on here, Manav. I know you won't let me forget. Any other new business? Okay, well, with that, I'm just going to close in memory of the other folks who died in ICE detention just last month. Luis Gustavaz Nunes Caceres, Luis Beltran Yanez Cruz, Perede La, Heber Sanchez Dominguez, and Victor Manuel Diaz. All died while in custody of ICE. So with that, I'm going to go ahead and adjourn the meeting. Thank you all.